Hi, our fellow YouTube watching American patriots. We are back once again. We are true conservative Asian voice in America. In this video presentation, we would like to talk about what has been happening in the Korean Peninsula since the abrupt termination of the Hanoi Summit in Vietnam on February 27th and 28th of this year. After the summit was terminated abruptly by our President Trump, who just walked away without signing any agreement, North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, he has faced so much trouble from his people, especially from his military leaders in North Korea. Some of them even decide to defect to China to run away from the foreseen starvation because of Kim Jong-un's failure in persuading President Trump to lift up the sanctions imposed against North Korea. So they know another round of starvation, similar to what happened back in 1994 through 1998 in North Korea. Another round of starvation is coming. So they decide to defect to China. They crossed China-North Korea border into Dandong, city of Dandong in China, in defection, away from his brutal dictatorship. That's what's happening in North Korea. In South Korea, Jae-In is still trying to work on the interest of North Korea. The summit, Hanoi Summit, was terminated because Kim Jong-un was making unreasonable requests to President Trump, and President Trump knew that this guy was making unreasonable, stupid, just totally ridiculous offers. He wanted to have both nuclear programs. He wanted to maintain that in his palm, and at the same time he wanted the United States to lift up all the economic and financial sanctions imposed against North Korea. He tried to kill two birds with just one stone thrown, but President Trump could not accept that offer. So the termination of the Hanoi Summit was very, very expected, and it really happened. But in the negotiation, in the final stage of negotiation, Kim Jong-un was keep asking President Trump to lift up the sanctions on the tourism enterprise at the Baekdu Mountain in North Korea. Baekdu Mountain is very popular, very popular tourism spot in North Korea. And another one was another sanction imposed on the Kaesong manufacturing industry complex in city of Kaesong in North Korea. Kim Jong-un wanted the United States to lift up those two sanctions imposed on those two items. But President Trump turned down his offer. And now what's happening in South Korea? Moon Jae-in is still talking about what President Trump turned down, what President Trump rejected in this Hanoi Summit. He's keep dialing up President Trump and begging President Trump to lift up those two sanctions. One sanction on the Baekdu Mountain tourism enterprise, and the second sanction imposed against the Kaesong manufacturing industrial complex, where South Korean business entrepreneurs used to operate their business, manufacturing business in that Kaesong. And it was shut down. It was shut down when North Korean soldier fired at and killed an innocent South Korean tourist visitor to North Korea. So now, United States is insisting that those two sanctions must be maintained. There's no way we could lift up those two sanctions before Kim Jong-un decides to give up his nuclear ambition. But Moon Jae-in is going around. He even recently went around in the several countries in Southeast Asia, like Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos, and even Brunei Empire in that region, begging every leader in those nations to help Moon Jae-in himself to pressure the United States, pressure President Trump to lift up the sanctions, those two sanctions imposed on North Korea, imposed against North Korea. What's going on? We all thought Moon Jae-in was the president of South Korea, which is our ally, one of the ally nations. But this guy he's being a mouthpiece. He's being an advocate for North Korea, Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping of China, who's trying to overpower the United States, which is ridiculous. Moon Jae-in he's so much anti-U.S., he's so pro-choice, pro-North Korea and pro-China. He's barking at President Trump. He's keep barking at President Trump to lift up those sanctions imposed against North Korea. We are insisting on those economic sanctions until Kim Jong-un finally decides to give up his nuclear ambition. And Moon Jae-in is trying to poke holes on those sanctions we imposed on North Korea. That's not the only sign that Moon Jae-in is showing to prove that he is anti-US. Another case was President Trump, at the end of last year, like around December last year, President Trump contacted the military leaders who are stationed in United States military leaders who are stationed in South Korea to protect South Korea from possible invasion by North Korea and Russia and China. We spend so much money in South Korea, having about close to 280,000 U.S. fighting soldiers and U.S. peacekeeping, forces in South Korea. We spend so much money, close to like a billion a year, every year. And President Trump, last year December, he asked Korean government to increase their portion, their share of the cost incurred by United States and UN peacekeeping forces stationed in South Korea to protect South Korea from possible invasion by North Korea, China, and Russia by 50%. He made that offer. He made that offer to South Korean President Moon Jae-in. And Moon Jae-in flat out turned down that offer. And he said to President Trump, we are not even willing to increase it by not even $1. Not even $1. And he turned it down. Now, let's look at another case. South Korea is exporting so many cars, like Hyundai and Kia, to the United States. Hundreds of millions of Korean-made cars, South Korean-made cars coming into the United States without paying any tariff. Maybe like a 10% tariff. But at the same time, when we try to export our US made cars, like Cadillac, all these good cars to South Korea, they impose 75 to 85% tariffs, which is totally one-sided, totally lopsided deal. Is that the only case? No. Moon Jae-in, he had some South Korean ships in the mid-ocean doing ship-to-ship transferring of coals and pig irons mined in North Korea and smuggled them into South Korea in violation of these anti-North Korea sanctions. He's totally anti-US. Is he truly a United States ally? I have a big question after that question. Big question mark. Big question mark. Is he truly our ally, or is he pro-North Korea and pro-China, therefore our enemy? We really got to think about that seriously. President Trump, let me give you one advice. We need to impose secondary to boycott on the Korean economy because of Moon Jae-in's repeated violation of the anti-North Korea sanctions. He is trying to poke holes, just like China has been doing on those sanctions. He is their puppet. So because of his repeated violation of the anti-North Korean sanctions we imposed upon Kim Jong-un's regime until he gives up his nuclear ambition and comes down on his knees and gives up everything and asks us. Finally, he begins to beg us to help him out. We cannot lift up those sanctions, but Moon Jae-in is poking holes on those sanctions. He's just trying to do just about everything he can do. He's begging foreign leaders to help him pressure the United States and President Trump to lift up those anti-North Korean sanctions, which is totally ridiculous. This guy is our enemy. He's not our ally. So because of as consequences for what he has done, the repeated violation of the anti-North Korea sanctions, we need to impose a secondary boycott or similar economic sanction against South Korea even. Put 75 to 85%, the equal amount of tariffs on South Korean cars coming into the United States. And if we do that, we'll be raking in so much money from those raised tariffs. And Mr. Trump, why don't we use that money? It could be 15 billion, 20 billion, even 25 billion every year. Right? And use that money to build that wall at the United States and Mexico border. Build a beautiful wall. Beautiful shining Trump wall at the US and Mexico border. That would be great. That would be great. We'll be just breaking even with South Korea if we do that. Put secondary economic boycott against South Korea, especially on the cars, Hyundai and Kia, and maybe perhaps on the electronics coming in from South Korea too, like Samsung phones, LG TVs, right? All the laundry machines, everything. Put secondary boycott on South Korea, just to teach Moon Jae-in, the evil and crafty anti-US president of South Korea, Moon Jae-in, just to teach him a lesson that he should be working as an ally of the United States, not as our enemy, not a pro-China, pro-North Korea puppet. To teach him a lesson. We need to teach him a lesson, President. You are wise and smart President. You can do that. Please impose secondary boycott against South Korea. Thank you. Our YouTube watching fellow American patriots, we need to bring Kim Jong-un down to his knees after giving up his nuclear ambition altogether very soon. Thank you for watching this video presentation. Thank you. Bye-bye.